Hey guys, tonight we step into a world of mud-caked boots, scandalous sideways glances, and courtship rituals so awkward they make modern dating apps look like pure wizardry. Imagine you're trudging down a narrow village path. The air smells like chimney smoke, damp wool, and someone is boiling cabbage again, probably for the 5th time this week. Your tunic is slightly too short, your shoes are leaking, and your parents? Oh, they've just decided it's time for you to settle. Not because you're in love, of course. Because it's practical. Because your family wants goats. And because the local matchmaker who has a mysterious collection of teeth that don't belong to her has just clomped into your cottage with a smug grin and a scroll of eligible candidates. You're about to go dating in medieval Europe. Spoiler: you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and what time you're listening to this. I love seeing where and when you're all drifting off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit at the edge of a lopsided wooden stool, staring at the woman your parents just called the match finder. She's got one eye that points to the future, the other to the past. Her breath smells faintly of onions and mystery. She rattles off names like she's reading from a livestock auction list. Beatrice Strong Arms can churn butter with her knees. William owns 3 hens, plus a cousin with a cow. Marjorie, her father's got debts, but she's got good hips. You pretend to care. The truth is, you have no say. Dating, if you can call it that, isn't about falling in love under the stars. It's about surviving winter with someone who knows how to gut a fish and won't accidentally curse the crops. Historians still argue whether matchmaking was more common in small villages or among nobility, but one thing's clear: personal. Choice ranked somewhere below has enough teeth to chew bread. And yet there's a strange sort of system here. The matchmaker acts like a human dating app. You're assessed for value, not in charisma, but in how much land your family owns, your potential to birth sturdy children, and your reputation, which could be ruined if someone once saw you smile too long at a blacksmith. There's also this awkward tradition. The matchmaker may inspect you like you're a loaf of bread, checking your hands for signs of hard work, your posture for signs of moral uprightness, and your hair for do well, lice. Because nobody wants to marry into a lice problem, your parents hover nearby, nodding and offering ale. They're eager, desperate even. You're of marriageable age, which in medieval terms means you've survived enough winters to count on one hand. Maybe 14, maybe 12, and if you're noble, possibly 10. You try not to squirm to break the tension. The matchmaker tells a joke about a man who married his goat by accident. Don't worry, it ends with the goat demanding alimony. You laugh politely. Outside, a chicken wanders by and pecks at your shoe. Inside, your future is being bartered like a cartload of potatoes. There's no swiping left. If the matchmaker says yes and your parents say yes, congratulations, you're halfway to betrothal, even if you've never spoken a word to your intended. Which brings us to one of the more quaint traditions, the viewing. It's exactly what it sounds like. You get to view the person you're meant to marry, usually from across a room, while drinking something warm and uncomfortably thick, like peasant beer or milk that's thinking about becoming cheese. There's very little eye contact. Too much would be scandalous. Instead, you nod. They nod. Someone coughs, a dog farts. Then you leave. Welcome to romance medieval style. Quirky fact incoming. In some regions, especially rural England and parts of Germany, people held something called a bed test. No, not that where the couple had to lie next to each other, fully clothed, separated by a giant sausage-shaped bolster, to see if they got along. Local elders might sit nearby and observe, because nothing says romance like being watched while pretending to sleep beside a stranger. You start to realize that even if you wanted to fall in love, the odds are against you. No privacy, no say, and the only music playing in the background is a guy named Thomas who owns a single-string fiddle and insists on playing it like it's an aggressive weapon. Your stomach growls, but you're too nervous to eat. You're not sure if this is the first step toward eternal partnership, or a lifelong struggle to avoid conversation with someone who believes bathing is a sin. And the matchmaker? She's already moved on, scribbling something onto her scroll, with a goose feather and muttering, yes, yes, they'd make decent offspring. Good cheekbones, strong wrists. You peek at the scroll. Your name is now written next to someone named Edith. You don't know her, but rumor has it she once chased off a fox with her bare hands. You're equal parts impressed and terrified. A final note from the matchmaker. Weddings are on market days cheaper ale. More witnesses. You nod, dazed. The door creaks open, and she leaves, muttering something about a goat with a limp kneading. A husband. Your parents sigh in relief. You sit, blinking slowly, wondering if there's still time to join a monastery. The next morning, you're awoken by the familiar sounds of your household creaking to life. The clatter of pots, the rhythmic thump of someone churning butter, like it owes them money, and the low groan of a rooster who's clearly phoning it in. Today, you rub your eyes, still half convinced that yesterday's matchmaking experience was a particularly vivid cabbage-induced nightmare. But no. Your father is already talking to the neighbor about how many chickens your future spouse is worth. That's right-chickens. In the medieval dating economy. Love isn't the currency. It's livestock. Marriage, you soon realize, is more of a contract negotiation than a romantic adventure. You aren't falling in love. You're trading for it. And unless you're a noble with titles to throw around, you're just another bartering chip. Today, your family is in full prep mode. You're going to meet Edith's family. Edith, strong wrists. Bare-handed fox fighter. That's the one. You dress in your second-best tunic, which smells faintly of onion stew and desperation. Your mother dusts flour off your shoulders like it matters, and your little brother whispers, "Don't get eaten." Comforting. The walk to Edith's homestead is a muddy journey past gossiping neighbors and one man arguing loudly with a goat. By the time you arrive, your shoes are damp, your dignity is somewhere in a puddle, and your heart is pounding, not from excitement, but because this might be the moment you're traded like a sack of barley. Edith's father greets you. He's large, loud, and has eyebrows like angry hedgehogs. You're ushered inside where a fire crackles and a pig naps in the corner like part of the furniture. And then the negotiations begin. Your father makes the opening offer. 2 goats and... We throw in the pickling barrel. Edith's father grunts. Make it 3 goats, and a promise not to marry her cousin instead. Historians still argue whether dowries or bride prices were more common in rural areas versus urban centers. But one thing's for certain, nobody's leaving here until the sheep count adds up. You sit silently as your future is haggled over like a slightly bruised turnip. Edith sits across from you. You try not to stare. She's not what you imagined. She's better. Or maybe worse. It's hard to tell because she hasn't said a word and is currently spooning stew into her mouth like it owes her money. This is the awkward reality. You're technically dating, and yet you're not allowed to speak freely. If you're lucky, maybe later you'll get a supervised walk around the fields while someone's grandmother lingers 6 feet behind you like a chaperoning specter dot in noble circles. Things are just as complicated but fancier. Instead of goats, it's acres. Instead of barrels, it's titles. You marry for alliances, treaties, and the vague hope that your offspring won't have too many toes. And nobles don't even get to meet first half the time. Someone just sends a messenger with a painted miniature, and if the recipient doesn't scream, it's a match. Back in the cottage, your father is now praising your teeth, strong and mostly straight, while Edith's father lists her. Skills like he's reading off a menu. Churns butter, weaves baskets, hasn't died of plague yet. You nod politely. Then comes the part you were dreading. The land talk. You own no land. You barely own a bed. But your uncle has promised that, should you marry, he'll gift you a sliver of field currently used by sheep and the occasional drunk traveler for napping. It's not much, but it's something. The 2 fathers grunt in what might be agreement. Ale is poured. A toast is made. And just like that, you're halfway betrothed. Quirky tidbit time. In some parts of medieval Europe, there were literal bride markets, where women stood in public squares while men negotiated dowries. These weren't always degrading, they were sometimes the only way women could enter marriage on their terms. But still, imagine being labeled mildly fertile, great with goats, while standing next to your sister who's tall, good hair, no moles. Eventually, the parents settle on the final terms: 2 goats, use of the pickling barrel until midsummer, and your solemn promise not to embarrass anyone by dying of dysentery before the harvest. You're officially unofficial. Which means, now comes the awkward part, bonding. You and Edith are encouraged to spend a little time getting acquainted. Translation: sit near each other while maintaining exactly 3 hand widths of distance and talking about weather, crops, or the latest gossip involving the priest and someone's missing turnips. You venture a joke. Nice stew technique. She shrugs. Silence. You mentioned the fox thing. She shrugs again, then finally speaks. It was a small fox. You're smitten, but careful. Feelings are dangerous here. Romance is a luxury, not a goal. If things fall apart, both families suffer. Land is lost, livestock withheld. Alliances crumble. You walk home later that evening with your father, talking about wedding logistics, your mother muttering about ale prices, and your stomach doing cautious little flips. You're not in love, but you single quotes re dot 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 b etrothed dash adjacent dot and tomorrow you'll learn the true horror of medieval flirting. No privacy, no kissing, and everyone, including the village goat, has an opinion. You wake to the muffled clanging of church bells and the distant sound of someone yelling at geese. Today is flirting day, apparently, though nobody calls it that out loud. In your tiny village, courtship is like a stage play in which everyone has a role and you're the awkward lead, reciting your lines while the entire population watches from behind a curtain made of gossip and judgment. You step outside, straight into a puddle, and spot Edith in the distance. She's carrying a bucket. Her braid swings like a weapon. You give a little wave. She stares at you like you just declared your intention to marry the moon dot. So, yeah, off to a great start dot in medieval times. There's no such thing as private affection. Flirting, if you can call it that, is a public performance. Even a glance held too long can set tongues wagging and holding hands scandalous. That's practically a prelude to elopement, or worse, a bishop's visit. You trudge toward the town square, heart pounding like a drum made of sweaty palms. You're not sure how this is supposed to work. There are no tutorials, no etiquette books, no candlelit dinners or slow dances under string lights. Just mud, livestock, and an audience of people who all know your aunt. You and Edith exchange nods. It's more or less a full-body declaration of interest by medieval standards. Then the real nightmare begins. Small talk in the presence of everyone. You try something clever. Nice weather for drying cheese. She looks up. My family doesn't dry cheese. You nod. Right. Me neither. I mean, we do sometimes, but not always. Historians still argue whether these interactions were more ritualized or spontaneous, but you suspect they were mostly just awkward, because the people around you are acting like you're already married. One old woman whispers, "They make a nice pair." Another mutters, "Hope they don't breed too early." Your ears are on fire, Dot, to make things worse. Someone has brought a priest over. Not the priest. Thankfully, this one's more junior. His job today is unofficial chaperone and spiritual buzzkill. He watches from a distance, arms folded, face set in a look that says, "I know what you're thinking, and God disapproves." You and Edith continue this strange little dance. You walk in slow, measured steps through the marketplace, careful not to touch or get too close. A dog barks. A child throws a turnip. Romance is in the air. Edith points out a patch of cabbages. You nod like she's just quoted poetry. Impressive, you say. They're symmetrical. She smiles. Barely. Victory. Fun fact. In some medieval towns, especially in France and Germany, couples were encouraged to spend supervised time together at festivals. These events were basically Tinder with extra hay and more screaming. Dances, riddles, and competitions allowed people to interact, but again, always with watchful eyes nearby. You pass by a stall selling poorly shaped bread. The vendor winks at you and says, "Looking to impress her?" Buy a loaf that won't kill her. You hand over a coin. Edith accepts the bread, sniffs it, then shrugs. Doesn't smell moldy. Your heart leaps. And just as you think things might be going well, The gossip parade begins. 3 villagers walk by slowly. Too slowly. Their eyes flick between you two like your characters in a morality play. One of them even TSKS. In this world, courtship is everyone's business. Every glance, every syllable, every breadcrumb passed is fuel for the village rumor. Engine. Someone will tell someone else that you smiled at her shoulder, and by nightfall the story will involve scandal, witchcraft, and a secret rendezvous behind the tannery. The tannery. The least romantic place imaginable. You and Edie sit on a log near the well. The priest nods, allowing the interaction as long as your knees don't touch. You talk about chickens, about how your aunt once tried to dye her hair with onion skins, about the weather again, because what else is safe? Edith says, "I heard your cousin got kicked by a horse." You smile. Twice. She chuckles. You feel a breeze of possibility. Of course. It can't last. A bell rings, signaling that someone's cow has wandered too far, and just like that, the walk is over. The chaperone nods once and disappears into the crowd like a disapproving shadow. Edith is whisked away by her mother. You're left holding the uneaten end of bread and wondering whether that counted as a date or a failed livestock inspection. Quirky. Tidbit. In some regions, especially Scandinavia, couples were encouraged to sing to one another in rhyming couplets as a form of flirtation. Imagine trying to woo someone by rhyming mud with crud while standing next to a relative. As you head home, you overhear 2 neighbors talking. I saw them smile. That's 2 steps from sin. You keep walking. The flirting might be over, but the whispers have just begun. You enter your home to find your mother already cooking something celebratory. You walked together, and she didn't hit you. Progress. You lie in your straw-filled bed that night, staring at the wooden ceiling. Romance here is like trying to light a candle in the rain. It takes time, patience, and several stern looks from clergy, but maybe, just maybe, Edith's tiny smile means something. Tomorrow you'll attend Mass, and if she glances your way during the sermon, well, that's practically a love letter. It's Sunday, which means one thing, church. And in the medieval dating world, that's basically the closest thing to a nightclub you'll ever get. You're freshly washed, or, at least, you dunked your face in cold water and rubbed your arms with mint leaves. Your tunic is clean-ish. The hole in the sleeve doesn't look that bad. And you've even combed your hair with your fingers and mumbled a prayer that it lies flat. The whole village gathers for Mass, and as you take your place on the hard wooden bench, your eyes do a quick scan. There she is. Edith. She's seated 3 rows ahead on the women's side. Her hair is braided again. She's wearing a green shawl that might be new, or at least not completely borrowed. You can only see the back of her head, but somehow that feels like enough. It's thrilling, terrifying, the medieval version of seeing a text bubble pop up. Mass begins. The priest steps forward, opening with a reading that sounds like it's going to take a while. You settle in. The incense drifts through the air, the smoke curling like thoughts you're not supposed to have during church. Now, here's the thing. Flirting during Mass is forbidden. But everyone does it. Church was one of the rare public spaces where young people could legally gather in the same room. It was like a medieval dating venue with judgment baked in. You weren't supposed to look, but if you did, you had to be very, very sneaky about it. You try to sneak a glance. Edith turns her head just slightly. Did she see you? Did she just smile? Historians still argue whether these silent glances were strategic or accidental. But in a society where open communication was frowned upon, a half-second eye contact during a hymn could be the entire romantic arc. You attempt to sing. Badly, it's a long psalm, and you're pretty sure you're butchering it. But you're also hoping Edith is impressed by the effort. Your voice cracks halfway through "Deliver us from evil," which feels a little on the nose. You see movement. Edith's head tilts slightly. Is she laughing? At you? You smile into your hymnal dot, and then, just as you're about to risk another, glance bam. Father Baynard's eyes lock onto you like a hawk. He knows he doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. His eyebrows say it all. This is God's house, not a tavern, young man. You look back at your hands and try to will yourself. Invisible, time crawls. You listen to a sermon about temptation, sin, and, conveniently, the importance of modesty in young couples. It's like the priest knows. Maybe he does. Maybe he was young once, too. Maybe he had an Edith. After the service, the crowd spills into the churchyard. The sun is out. Birds chirp. Children chase each other around the gravestones. And the villagers form little clusters of conversation, which all inevitably turn into news updates about everyone's romantic prospects. You linger near a well, pretending to be interested in a cracked stone while inching closer to Edith's group. She's talking to her cousin. Her arms are crossed, but her eyes flick your way briefly. Just enough you nod. She nods back. Your hearts do a strange little somersault that neither of you will ever admit to. Quirky fact of the day. In some parts of medieval France, it was tradition for a young man to offer his crush a sprig of herbs after church. Rosemary meant loyalty. Thyme meant courage. And parsley, well, that usually meant you were desperate and running out of options. You don't have herbs, but you do have a clean-ish piece of linen in your pocket. It's folded carefully, and you offer it to Edith as she walks by. She takes it, barely looks at you, but she doesn't drop it. Success. You watch her disappear down the path with her family, the green shawl fluttering in the breeze. It's a strange feeling, this slow, cautious dance. Every moment feels stretched out, suspended in silence and rules, and the fear of doing something too modern, like smiling too obviously or daring to say you look nice, without including a prayer. As you walk home, your little brother asks, "Did she see your face?" You nod. "She still took the cloth?" You nod again. Then you're halfway married. That night you lie in bed and replay the two glances, the half-smile and the sacred cloth hand off like a bard reviewing their favorite ballad. It's slow, awkward, full of rules. But this is the closest thing to romance you've got. Tomorrow, things are going to get even more uncomfortable, because someone's going to suggest a chaperoned walk with a nun and a goose. The next morning you're told no, summoned to go on a walk with Edith. Not alone, of course. That would be madness. No, this will be a chaperoned stroll, the medieval version of a romantic dinner under surveillance. You're allowed to talk. You're allowed to walk. You're not allowed to enjoy it too much. Your mother wipes a smudge from your forehead with the corner of her apron. Walk slow, she advises. Don't sweat. You're already sweating. Waiting outside is your assigned companion for the day, Sister Benedicta, a retired nun who has spent the last 30 years perfecting the art of walking silently just close enough to hear everything, but far enough to pretend she's not listening. Her sidekick today? A goose. No one knows who it belongs to. The goose is simply there. It waddles behind the sister like her feathery deputy. You spot Edith at the edge of the road, her braid even tighter than usual. She looks both braced for impact and quietly amused. She nods once. You nod once. Romance achieved. The walk begins. You start with pleasantries. Nice weather. It's raining. Right. Great start. The path takes you past the edge of the village, near the fields where cabbages are trying to grow and cows are pretending not to eavesdrop. You keep your hands firmly at your sides like you're under arrest. Edith occasionally kicks a pebble. Sister Benedicta hums a hymn under her breath. For a moment, it's almost peaceful. Then the goose honks loud and rude, as if to say, mind your distance. You both jump. Edith stifles a laugh. You grin. Your chaperone's very dedicated. That's not my goose. You keep walking. Historians still argue whether chaperoned walks were more common in towns or villages. But one thing is certain. If you were of marriageable age and someone caught you out walking without a chaperone, the consequences were swift and dramatic. Rumors, shame, and possibly a public scolding from the parish priest, who smelled like incense and onions. You pass a row of poplar trees. Birds chirp. The sun breaks briefly through the clouds, dappling the path with light. You dare to ask something. Bolder? So, do you like goats? Edith considers this. They're useful. You nod solemnly like she's just revealed a deep truth. The conversation flows better than you'd hoped, slow but real. You talk about chores, about the time her cousin fell in the well, about your fear of bees, about how the blacksmith's son thinks he's attractive because he once wore a red scarf. Quirky tidbit? In parts of 14th century England, some villages had designated lovers' lanes, quiet paths where supervised courting could take place. The trick was that they were never actually quiet. Someone was always hiding behind a tree, accidentally planting onions. Back on your walk, you're building a rhythm. Edith tells you she likes singing, but not in public. You admit you're terrible at wood chopping. She says she can outbake anyone in the village. You say you believe her. Then Sister Benedicta clears her throat. Twice. This is the international signal for space out a little more. You both shuffle a step apart, and then Edith says something unexpected. I like this walk. You blink. Me, too. She looks at you, really looks at you. I think I'll keep the cloth. That linen square you gave her after church, still tucked in her pocket. Your cheeks go warm. Your knees go slightly numb. This is basically an engagement by medieval standards. The goose hisses. Sister Benedicta mutters something that sounds like a psalm. You near the edge of the fields and pause. Edith bends to pluck a tiny flower, one of the brave ones pushing through the dirt. She offers it not with ceremony, but casually, like she's handing you a pebble. For your goat, she says. You laugh. It's real. It escapes before you can stop it. In that moment, You're not thinking about livestock negotiations or linen dowries or the fact that your entire village is waiting to see if you'll mess this up. You're just walking next to someone who seems to understand that this whole courtship dance is ridiculous and still worth doing. You head back toward the village in comfortable silence, Sister Benedicta trailing behind, the goose occasionally darting off to terrorize unsuspecting insects. As you approach the main road, you hear voices. The news of your walk has already begun to spread. "Oh, they went all the way to the willow tree," someone says. "That means 3 goats, easy." You glance at Edith. She rolls her eyes, but she's smiling. You reach your family's house and pause. You're not supposed to touch, not supposed to say anything too bold, not supposed to do anything that might result in scandal. So you settle for, maybe, another walk. She nods once, if the goose allows it. You watch her walk away, her braid bouncing with each step. You step inside your cottage to find your father, sharpening a stick with intention, and your mother whispering with the neighbor about flower arrangements made of grain. Your brother raises an eyebrow. "Did she talk?" You grin. "Yes," he nods sagely. "You're doomed." That night you lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, replaying the walk, the words, the smile. You've never spoken so much to one person your age outside of a pigsty or a family scolding. You might be falling in love, or it might be the goose-induced adrenaline. Either way. Next comes the hard part, the noble families where love is less. About conversation and more about castle politics, land deeds, and sometimes actual 12-year-olds getting married. You thought your muddy village courtship was awkward. Welcome to the noble version, where awkwardness is replaced with agendas, affection is replaced with alliances, and a tender smile might just signal a trade war. It starts when a scroll arrives by messenger. It's sealed with a wax crest depicting a very smug-looking falcon. Your family gathers around the hearth as your father unrolls it. It's an invitation from the House of Montmartre to discuss matrimonial possibility between you and Lady Ubel. You blink. "Who?" Your mother whispers. "She's 12. Her family owns a vineyard." You choke slightly on your cabbage stew. It turns out that your uncle, ever the schemer, has promised your hand to a minor noble house in exchange for some vines, a marriage bond, and perhaps a very optimistic claim to a crumbling watchtower. You're being upgraded. This is how it works among the nobles. You're not marrying a person. You're merging estates, closing political gaps, and if you're lucky, gaining access to a goose pond. Love is not just secondary, it's laughable. You prepare for the visit like someone preparing for trial. Your mother polishes your shoes with bacon fat to give them a noble shine. Your father coaches you on how to bow deeply, but not desperately. You want to say, "I'm available," not "I'm starving." You arrive at the estate after half a day's ride. It's grand in the way things get when the roof has more shingles than the local tax collector has teeth. The guards let you in. The hounds ignore you. Inside, everything smells like lavender, wood smoke, and mild resentment. Lady Usabel is waiting. In the hall, flanked by 2 maids and a nurse who eyes you like you might sneeze plague, Isabel is in fact 12, possibly 11 and a half. She looks bored. You bow. She sighs. Then her father appears, a tall man with a forehead like a battering ram. "Welcome," he says. "Let us discuss the union." The union. As if you're joining bank accounts and battle axes, historians still argue whether noble marriages were more about strengthening bloodlines or consolidating land. Either way, personal feelings were optional, sometimes outright discouraged. The negotiation begins. Your uncle talks about your family's ancestral claim to a stream that might technically be a ditch. Isabel's father counters with tales of her lineage descended, allegedly, from a Roman general and a bishop. They debate who brings what. Goats versus vineyards, loyalty versus dowry, and how many ceremonial glove each side will gift. You sit there nodding, sipping a wine that tastes like crushed plum and ancient ambition. Fun fact. In medieval France and parts of Italy, noble children were often betrothed before age 10. The marriage would be formalized years later, usually after puberty, but the deal was locked in early. So technically, you might already be married, just waiting for the official ceremony and a witness who isn't napping. Lady Eubelle finally speaks. Do you like poetry? You pause. Sometimes she shrugs. I don't, but my tutor says I must. She returns to her embroidery, stitching what appears to be a surprisingly detailed boar. You begin to understand that while peasant dating is painful, noble courtship is a chess match, and you're a pawn. After hours of negotiation and 3 servings of undercooked pigeon, you're told the match is tentatively approved. You will write letters, polite ones, no flourishes, no confessions. Just, I hope your studies are going well, and the weather here is appropriate. You ride home in silence, your family buzzing with pride. Your father is already planning your new coat of arms, maybe a badger with a scroll. You, meanwhile, are picturing Edith, her smirk, the way she kicked a pebble, how she said she liked the walk. You're betrothed to a vineyard, but your heart still lingers in the cabbage fields. That night, as you lie in bed, your brother asks, "So, how's your new wife?" She embroiders wild pigs. He nods. Love is weird, quirky tidbit of the night. Some noble families included bizarre clauses in marriage contracts. One Spanish document from the 1300s required the groom to never keep bees indoors and always greet his mother-in-law in rhyme. Your contract? Still in draft form. You're not officially wed yet. And somewhere in your village, Edith is probably walking past the well, kicking stones, and wondering where you've gone. Tomorrow, you'll learn that even peasants can fall for the wrong person, especially if that person is the miller's son, and your parents are not amused. You're back in your village, your feet are muddy again. Your tunic smells like fireplace smoke, and your heart? Well, it's somewhere between confused and treasonous, because while your family celebrates your possible noble alliance, you keep finding excuses to walk by the mill, not because you need flour, because of Tommaso, the miller's son. He's got hair that does what it wants, a laugh that makes pigs snort, and arms like someone who lifts sacks of grain for fun, which, to be fair, he does. He's not noble. He's not wealthy. He's not even particularly polite. But he saw you trip over a fence once and didn't laugh. And now he's everywhere. Carrying wheat. Feeding the mule. Standing under a tree like he invented. Leaning. You're not sure when it started. Maybe when he helped you drag a stuck wheelbarrow from a ditch. Maybe when he offered you a roasted chestnut without asking anything in return. Maybe when he called your noble betrothal a waste of good cheekbones. Whatever it was, it's grown roots. You're not supposed to notice someone. Like Tommaso. Your family would be horrified. He doesn't come with goats. He doesn't bring land. He's not even chaperone approved. But he makes you laugh, and you haven't laughed in days dot, so you linger. One afternoon, while fetching water from the stream, a very unnecessary task, you run into him again. Spying on my wheat? He teases. You shrug. Maybe. It's very golden. He grins. That's because I yell at it. You snort. Very advanced technique. The conversation is easy. Too easy. You forget Sister Benedicta exists. You forget Edith's braid. You even forget that you're technically pre-engaged to a 12-year-old, noble with embroidery skills and a moat. Historians still argue how common cross-class crushes were. Officially, they were forbidden. Peasants married peasants. Nobles married nobles, and mixing was about as acceptable as sneezing during communion. But unofficially, human hearts have always been nosy little rebels. Tommaso offers you a pear. It's bruised and slightly dusty. You take it like it's gold? I heard about your noble thing, he says. You nod. Sounds awful. You nod again. Then, without looking directly at you, he says, you ever think about not doing what they say? You blink. That's dangerous. Talk. Romantic. Foolish. Exactly what you needed to hear. You walk home chewing the pear slowly, thinking about how safe it feels to talk to someone who doesn't care about scrolls or sheep dowries or whose cousin owns a tower. The next day, your mother sees you smile after a trip to the mill. She narrows her eyes. You're not falling for that boy, are you? You freeze. She crosses her arms. That family still owes us butter. That evening, she speaks with your father. He grumbles something about unsanctioned fraternizing and dangerous shoulders. The next morning, your chores are doubled. Coincidence? You think not. Quirky tidbit. In some medieval villages, if two people of different classes were caught holding hands or kissing, they could be sentenced to public punishment, like sweeping the square together while tied at the wrist, to teach restraint, or worse, being forced to confess before the whole village. With props, you stop going to the mill. You avoid the stream. But one day, you find a note tucked under a stone by your door. It's not poetic. It's not even spelled right. It just says, I'm still yelling at the wheat. You smile into your sleeve. That night, your father announces a visit from Lady Isabel's family. They want to inspect your village, which means you'll have to play noble again. Clean shoes. No jokes, no flowery boys leaning on trees. You nod. Inside. Your stomach sinks, because you know something now. Tommaso laughs with his whole chest. Lady Isabel doesn't even like poetry. And you're in trouble. Real feelings shaped. Class inappropriate trouble. Tomorrow you'll try to send a letter, but you'll need help because you can't write. And the town scribe? He lives for gossip. It's official. You're smitten, tangled, and thoroughly doomed. And you've decided to write a letter. A bold move, considering you barely know your own alphabet. The only quill in the house belongs to your cousin and is currently stuck in her hair, and you have to ask the village scribe, who treats private matters like bedtime stories for the public. But you're desperate. You wake early and rehearse the message in your head while feeding chickens. Something short, something heartfelt, something that doesn't sound like it was composed by a tipsy monk. Eventually, you settle on the noble sentiment. I miss yelling at the wheat, too. You walk the winding path to the scribe's homa, narrow, smoky cottage that smells like ink, onions, and the crushing weight of literacy. The scribe, Master Ulrich, is already hunched over a pile of scrolls, his nose dangerously close to a puddle of melted wax. He looks up and grins. Love note? You freeze. I need a statement, Ulrich winks. I'm sure you do. Who's the lucky soul? Lady Vineyard or Mr. Muscles by the mill? You blink hard. It's not for you to, relax. I won't tell anyone, he lies cheerfully, except maybe Brother Thomas, and my neighbor, and possibly the baker's wife, but only if she asks directly. You sigh. He dips his quill and gestures. Dictate away. You mumble your message. He writes, humming a song that sounds suspiciously like the one villagers use when someone's caught kissing behind the woodpile. When you finish, he reads it back with theatrical flair. Dearest Tommaso, the field feels quiet without your nonsense. I miss yelling at the wheat, too. Yours, the fool who's betrothed elsewhere. You snatch the parchment before he can add. Hearts to the corners. Ulrich offers sealing wax. You decline. Instead, you fold the note into a tight square and set off to find the mill, heart pounding like a festival drum. Historians still argue whether medieval love letters were more poetic or practical, while noble courtly letters were often filled with overblown metaphors. Think, your eyes are like the moon drowning in honey. Commoner messages tended to get straight to the point. Yours? It's somewhere in between. When you reach the mill, Tommaso isn't there. Only his father, who smells like wet grain and suspicion. You nod respectfully, pretend to admire a sack of rye, and sneak the letter into the crook of the woodpile near the door. You walk away fast, trying not to look suspicious, trying not to look like someone who just committed emotional treason. The next few days crawl. No message. No response. Just chores, sermons, and whispered noble visit preparations that make you want to disappear into a haystack. But then, while you're sweeping the alley behind the bakehouse, you spot something tucked into your apron. A note. Your name is scrawled across the front in something that might be charcoal or berry juice, or extremely determined dirt. You unfold it. It says, the wheat misses you. So does someone else. Let's talk. Under the willow. After dusk, bring no nuns. Your heart flips, flops, and throws a party in your rib cage. You fold the note, tuck it away, and spend the rest of the day pretending not to smile so hard your face hurts. Quirky tidbit. In some medieval villages, lovers would exchange messages hidden inside loaves of bread, embroidery patterns, or even carved vegetables. Couriers weren't always human sometimes. Chickens were trained to carry notes. Your method? Marginally more effective than poultry post. That evening, you sneak out. The willow tree stands tall near the stream, its branches whispering secrets in the wind. You wait in the dusk light, fidgeting with your sleeve. Then Tommaso appears. No grain. Sacks this time. Just him. You sit side by side on a flat stone. Words don't come easily at first, but then, like pulling cork from a barrel, they rush out. You talk about everything. The noble family. The pressure. The goats. He listens. Then he says, simply, I don't have vineyards. I don't have titles, but I know what I want. You look at him, and it's not poetry, but it's more than enough. You lean back, let the sky grow darker, and imagine a life where people marry for love, not land. Where yelling at wheat together counts for something. Where messages don't need scribes who moonlight as rumor mills. But the moment can't last. Because tomorrow your family receives a formal invitation. A wedding contract. Lady Isabel is coming. And you'll have to decide, stick with safety, or risk everything for a boy who smells faintly of flour and revolution. The next morning it arrives, a finely folded scroll tied with a silk ribbon that probably cost more than your entire roof. The wax seal is fresh and smug, like it knows you've been sneaking around under willow trees. Your mother holds the letter like it might burst into music. It's official, she says, cheeks flushed. Lady Isabel and her family will visit next week. They're bringing a priest. And pastries. You nod slowly, like someone who's just been assigned their own public execution date. Your brother whispers, hope they bring jam tarts. You sit at the table, chewing stale bread and trying not to make eye contact with your future. Your parents bustle around, planning, flower arrangements, bathing schedules, whether the cottage needs another goat just to impress the guests. You barely hear them because your head is still at the willow tree, and that note, and TOMMA, but there's no time to daydream. The rest of the week is a whirlwind of cleaning, rehearsing polite phrases, and standing still while your aunt tries to hem your tunic with string that smells like vinegar. Everyone is preparing for your big match. Everyone but you. Then, just when you think things can't get more tangled, you're caught doing the most scandalous thing imaginable, laughing. With TOMMA by the well. You didn't mean to. He'd just told a ridiculous story about a pig that tried to court his cousin. You cracked, full teeth. Mid-snickering, you heard it a gasp. Old widow Elena. Her hearing is unreliable, but her outrage is Olympic level. She storms off faster than you thought her knees could move. Before nightfall, the story has mutated. You and Tommaso weren't just laughing. You were holding hands, embracing, possibly planning elopement, or heaven forbid sharing a plum. Next thing you know, your father slams a mug down on the table. Is it true? You freeze. Have you been wasting our name with that mill rat? Your mother gasps. You'll ruin everything. You try to speak. Words trip. I just like talking to him. Talking? Your father says, his voice going sharp. That's how it starts. Historians still argue whether parental control was stronger among peasants or nobles, but in either case, crossing family expectations was a fast track to social ruin. And in a small village, reputation sticks to you like soot on chimney stone. By morning, it's official. You're forbidden to speak to Tommaso. You're assigned new chores, all far from the mill. And just to be safe, Sister Benedicta is suddenly everywhere again. Like a robed shadow with suspiciously good hearing. You try to pass a note through your cousin. It gets intercepted. You try to mouth sorry across the market square. The townsbaker winks and shouts, just marry already, which does not help. You are for all intents and purposes cut off. Worse yet, the rumors spread. You hear them whispered behind baskets of onions. Star-crossed lovers. She was promised to a noble, you know. He has flour under his nails, imagine, quirky tidbit. And some medieval towns, public punishment for unsanctioned romance involved being locked in the stocks together, not as a reward, but as a warning. The community watched through things. Mostly cabbage, sometimes sympathy, sometimes eggs. You're not locked up, but you feel it. Everywhere you go, there are eyes. Even the animals seem to judge you. One night you sneak out again, just to breathe at the willow tree. You wait. A long time. No Tom. You whisper his name into the wind, but it gets tangled in the leaves. He's not coming. You sit alone for what feels like hours. The sky turns indigo. The air cools. You imagine telling your future children, "Once upon a time I fell in love with a boy who understood wheat. But then a vineyard wrote us a letter, and that was that." When you return home, the house is asleep. A note waits on your bed. No name. Just be careful. They're watching you. A friend, you stare at the words until they blur. This isn't just matchmaking anymore. This is war. Tomorrow, the visiting nobles arrive. You'll wear your best clothes. You'll smile at a girl who likes embroidery, and you'll try not to think about the mill. Or the boy with the crooked smile, or how your heart is doing everything your parents told it not to do. The day begins with a chicken in your bedroom. Not a metaphor, an actual chicken. Somehow it got in, fluttered up to the rafters, and is now clucking judgmentally as you try to lace your nicest tunic, the one with sleeves long enough to hide your clenched fists. Because today's the day. Lady Isabel is coming. Your parents are up before the sun, throwing flour around like it's confetti. Your brother is polishing spoons with a rag that only looks clean from across the room. Even your aunt, who usually claims she's too old for fuss, is washing her face and muttering about how this might be the one that finally lifts our name out of the cabbage patch. You sit by the fire, pretending not to notice the nervous flutter in your stomach. Not love, not even dread, just the feeling of someone being boxed in by a ribbon that's tied a little too tight. Outside, hooves on stone. Voices. Laughter. The noble parade has arrived. Lady Ubel steps from the carriage, in a velvet gown the color of overripe grapes. She's taller than before, still young, still mildly disinterested in everything. Behind her, her nurse, her tutor, her brother, who's definitely memorized 3 different dueling stances, and a priest who already looks exhausted. The visit begins politely. Your parents present cheese. Her parents nod, like cheese is a sign of virtue. You all sit stiffly around the hearth while 2 dogs fight under the table. Then comes the gift exchange. You offer her a basket of herbs and a ribbon you definitely didn't find in the dirt. She accepts it with a smile so tiny you think it might be a facial cramp. Then she gives you something, a token, a silken token with embroidery in silver thread. Your initials, her initials, and a lopsided duck? She shrugs. I tried to make a dove. You stare at it. It's oddly touching. And terrifying. Because a noble tradition. This is more than a gift. It's a courtly love token, a symbol of affection, loyalty, and in some cases a promise. Historians still debate how literal these gestures were. Some say they were symbolic, nothing more than polite flattery wrapped in lace. Others argue they were deadly serious. Accepting one might mean a future engagement, or at the very least intense awkwardness if you later marry someone else. You're handed a stringed instrument and asked to play something. You strum it like it's a sack of potatoes. Isabel looks amused. The priest frowns like you've insulted a saint. You try to focus, but your mind is somewhere else entirely. It's under the willow tree. It's behind the mill. It's remembering a pear, a grin, and the way someone said, "I want you." "Lady?" Isabel leans in slightly. "Do you like riddles?" You nod. "Sure." She grins. "What has arms, no legs, and crushes joy? Marriage?" She laughs. "Close, my mother." You nearly choke. Maybe she's not as dull as she seemed. Still, as the visit winds on, and the grown-ups begin negotiating dowries and logistics, you feel it again. That tightening. That shrinking sense of your world being decided for you in voices louder than your own. And then comes the final ritual. The private walk. Sort of. It's you, Isabel, the priest, the tutor, 2 sheep, and a goat who seems deeply invested in your romantic future. You walk slowly down the village lane. She tells you about her dreams, learning to fence, eating 10 apples in one sitting, visiting the sea. None of them involve you. Not cruelly, just truthfully. You admit you like quiet. She admits she likes shouting. You say you like simple food. She says her cook once served her iced partridge in rose water, and she cried for 2 days. There's a lull. Then she says, "You like someone else." You nearly trip over the goat. "No, I don't," you lie, with the confidence of a cat wearing mittens. She doesn't press, just nods. "I like someone else too, but he doesn't own socks." You glance at her. There's something real in her expression, honest, soft around the edges. "Maybe," she says, "we do this for them, the families, the vineyards, the goats. But maybe we don't have to pretend we're in love." You exhale quirky tidbit, and some courtly love traditions. Nobles exchanged tokens and poetic verses to someone other than their intended spouse. A weird medieval loophole. "Yes, I'm marrying that one, but I'm emotionally tortured by this other one, and it's very romantic. Please pass the lute." You return to the cottage just before sunset. The families beam. The priest mumbles, "A blessing." The visit is declared a success. Your mother hugs you, whispering, "You'll be safe. You'll be respected." You nod. But later, you lie in bed staring at the ceiling beams, the silken duck token clutched in your hand. Safe isn't the same as free, and respect isn't the same as love. You drift off wondering, what if you wrote to Edith? What if she knew about Tommaso? What if just maybe there were more people playing the same dangerous game? Tomorrow you'll face the rules again, and the bedroom interview with the priest and your aunt, because what's romance without a little casual snooping into your purity status? You wake to the sound of your aunt scrubbing something with furious energy and muttering, "They'll ask. Oh, they'll ask." You sit up, blinking. What'll they ask? She whirls around, her hair in a frizzy cloud, her apron flowered with secrets, everything. You don't like the sound of that because today is the day of the bedroom interview tradition, so bizarre and uncomfortable. It makes the goose-chaperoned walks look like poetry. Your family has invited a local priest, Father Robald, to conduct what is officially called a premarital discussion. Unofficially, it's an interrogation with no exit route. It takes place in your room, which someone has tidied by hiding all the real clutter under your bed and scattering lavender sprigs around like you're trying to seduce a bee colony. You're told to sit on the edge of your straw mattress with your hands folded and your back straight, as if you're about to take confession with God, and a stern aunt in the same room. Which essentially you are. Father Robald arrives wearing an expression that suggests he was born frowning and has never once been wrong. He's accompanied by your aunt because, of course, she's staying in the room, and a scribe who seems far too excited to take notes. Let us begin. The priest intones. You nod like someone whose spirit has already left their body. Have you kept your thoughts chaste? You blink? I think so. Thinking is not the same as knowing, he says. Your aunt clears her throat loudly. Have you lain beside another unmarried soul? Father Robald continues. No. Have you held hands with excessive warmth? Define excessive. The scribe's quill scratches furiously. Historians still argue. How widespread these bedroom interviews were, some evidence suggests. They were mostly conducted in towns where the church held serious sway over local marriages, especially if property or dowries were at stake. Others think the whole practice was exaggerated, but to you it feels painfully real. Father Robald asks about dreams, about temptations, about how often you think about sin, which is unfair because now you're definitely thinking about it, especially after he uses the word lustful inclinations in a tone that makes your aunt gasp and clutch her rosary. He asks whether you understand your wifely duties. You say yes. You definitely don single quotes T. Then he hands you a pamphlet called the Marital Manual and suggests you memorize pages 2 through 11 before the wedding night. You try not to notice that the diagrams have been scribbled out by someone who really didn't want anyone getting ideas. After a very long silence, your aunt finally chimes in. She once looked at the miller's son with too much interest. The priest's head whips around. You did? I don't think so. You don't think so? Maybe I blinked slowly? He closes his eyes, muttering something that might be Latin for disaster child. Their aunt adds, there were. Also whispers about a walk under the willow. The scribe is now writing in all capital letters. You realize this is not going well. To lighten the mood. You joke. At least we weren't near the tannery. No one laughs. You're dismissed an hour later, emotionally wrung out and still clutching the world's most useless pamphlet. Your parents ask how it went. You say fine, and then hide in the shed for an hour. That night, the whole village seems to know. People avoid eye contact. The baker's wife sends you a bun shaped vaguely like a nun, and your cousin offers to burn the priest's sandals. In solidarity, you wonder if Tommaso has heard. You wonder if he's been questioned too. You consider running. You don't. Quirky tidbit. In some remote regions, it was believed that if a couple's bedsheet turned blue after the wedding night, it meant they had been pure. Spoiler, this test didn't actually work, but it kept people very nervous about laundry stains. You lie in bed, the lavender sprigs tickling your nose, trying to block out the priest's voice in your head. Warm hand-holding is the devil's. Handshake. You turn over and sigh. In 2 days, the noble family returns. But tomorrow, you'll be reminded of something important. Marriage isn't always a one-time gamble, because widows, widowers, and second-chance love stories, they happen. 2. Even if you're gasp 27, you wake to the sound of your aunt scrubbing something with furious energy and muttering, "They'll ask. Oh, they'll ask." You sit up, blinking. What'll they ask? She whirls around, her hair in a frizzy cloud, her apron flowered with secrets, everything. You don't like the sound of that, because today is the day of the bedroom interview, tradition, so bizarre and uncomfortable. It makes the goose-chaperoned walks look like poetry. Your family has invited a local priest, Father Robald, to conduct what is officially called a premarital discussion. Unofficially, it's an interrogation with no exit route. It takes place in your room, which someone has tidied by hiding all the real clutter under your bed and scattering lavender sprigs around like you're trying to seduce a bee colony. You're told to sit on the edge of your straw mattress with your hands folded and your back straight, as if you're about to take confession with God, and a stern aunt in the same room, which essentially you are. Father Robald arrives wearing an expression that suggests he was born frowning and has never once been wrong. He's accompanied by your aunt because, of course, she's staying in the room, and a scribe, who seems far too excited to take notes. Let us begin. The priest intones. You nod like someone whose spirit has already left their body. Have you kept your thoughts chaste? You blink? I think so. Thinking is not the same as knowing, he says. Your aunt clears her throat loudly. Have you lain beside another unmarried soul? Father Robald continues. No. Have you held hands with excessive warmth? Define excessive. The scribe's quill scratches furiously. Historians still argue. How widespread these bedroom interviews were, some evidence suggests. They were mostly conducted in towns where the church held serious sway over local marriages, especially if property or dowries were at stake. Others think the whole practice was exaggerated, but to you it feels painfully real. Father Robald asks about dreams, about temptations, about how often you think about sin, which is unfair because now you're definitely thinking about it, especially after he uses the word lustful inclinations in a tone that makes your aunt gasp and clutch her rosary. He asks whether you understand your wifely duties. You say yes, you definitely don single quotes T. Then he hands you a pamphlet called the Marital Manual and suggests you memorize pages 2 through 11 before the wedding night. You try not to notice that the diagrams have been scribbled out by someone who really didn't want anyone getting ideas. After a very long silence, your aunt finally chimes in. She once looked at the miller's son with too much interest. The priest's head whips around. You did? I don't think so. You don't think so? Maybe I blinked slowly? He closes his eyes, muttering something that might be Latin for disaster child. Their aunt adds, there were. Also whispers about a walk under the willow. The scribe is now writing in all capital letters. You realize this is not going well. To lighten the mood. You joke. At least we weren't near the tannery. No one laughs. You're dismissed an hour later, emotionally wrung out and still clutching the world's most useless pamphlet. Your parents ask how it went. You say fine, and then hide in the shed for an hour. That night, the whole village seems to know. People avoid eye contact. The baker's wife sends you a bun shaped vaguely, like a nun, and your cousin offers to burn the priest's sandals. In solidarity, you wonder if Tommaso has heard. You wonder if he's been questioned too. You consider running. You don't. Quirky tidbit. In some remote regions, it was believed that if a couple's bedsheet turned blue after the wedding night, it meant they had been pure. Spoiler, this test didn't actually work, but it kept people very nervous about laundry stains. You lie in bed, the lavender sprigs tickling your nose, trying to block out the priest's voice in your head. Warm hand-holding is the devil's. Handshake. You turn over and sigh. In 2 days, the noble family returns. But tomorrow, you'll be reminded of something important. Marriage isn't always a one-time gamble, because widows, widowers, and second-chance love stories, they happen. 2. Even if you're gasp 27, you're in the garden trying to weed around a rock that has absolutely no interest in moving when she appears. ELSP, ETH. Your cousin, your friend, your local source of both chaos and herbal remedies. She smells like time and secrets and has exactly 3 leaves in her hair. You look miserable, she says cheerfully. You wipe sweat from your brow. I'm fine. Layer, your frown's doing laps around your face. You sigh. I don't know what to do. Elspeth crouches beside. You, brushing dirt off a sprig of mint like it's her child. Do you want to marry Lady Duck? You blink. Use a bell. She embroidered a duck. You pause. It was supposed to be a dove. Elspeth smirks. See? Even the thread doesn't believe in this match. You sit back on your heels, feeling the weight of it all pressing down like wet wool. Then she says very softly, "There's a way, if you want help." You look up. Her eyes are steady. "I could make something," she says. Something persuasive. You freeze. Elspeth. "I'm not saying poison," she adds quickly. "Just a little push. A charm. A draft. Nothing dangerous, just helpful." This is the part of the story where everything goes sideways. Quirky. Fact. In many medieval villages, love potions were very real. Not magical, of course, but deeply believed in. Women, and occasionally men, would seek help from wise folk, herb women or unofficial witches to win a heart, stop a wedding, or persuade a rival to trip down a well. Ingredients varied by region and rumor. Rosemary for fidelity, thyme for courage, a pinch of apple seed, a lock of hair, and sometimes, yes, bodily fluids. You don't want to know the details. Trust me. You stare at Elspeth. You'd really do that? She shrugs. You've been miserable for weeks. That boy at the mill, he makes you laugh. That noble family makes you polish your shoes until they squeak. You glance toward the path that leads to the vineyard estate. Tomorrow, they return with official papers. It's now or never. I don't want to trap anyone. You say it wouldn't trap, she replies. Just nudge. You hesitate. And then against all common sense you nod. That night you slip away after dinner. The stars are bright, the air thick with late summer set. Elspeth leads you to her cottage, a tilted little hut that smells of dried lavender, crushed dreams, and something faintly like goat cheese. She lights a candle, pulls jars from the shelves, whispers to the herbs like they're old friends. You sit nervously on a stool, trying not to think about what happens if this goes horribly wrong. Drink this, she says, handing you a cup. You sniff it, Dot. It smells like apples and something else. Something sharp and green and maybe magical. Or maybe just mint that got into a fight with vinegar. This won't make anyone fall in love, she says. But it'll open a door. If they're already at the threshold, maybe they'll step through. You drink it, Dot. It tastes like summer arguing with regret. And then she hands you a second cup, smaller, warmer, for him. You stare at it. What if it works, you ask. What if it doesn't? She replies. The next morning you find Tommaso near the edge of the mill road, loading grain sacks with that casual efficiency that makes him look like he's dancing with hay. You walk up slowly. He sees you, smiles. Good morning, Rebel. You offer the cup. He raises an eyebrow. What's this? Just try it. He drinks, no questions, no drama, just trust, and then he leans in, gently, and whispers, You're shaking. You are Dot because now you've done it. You've crossed the line, the sacred line between doing your duty and rewriting your life with herbs. Historians still argue whether love potions were ever effective psychologically. They may have created belief. That belief alone could tip hearts. But more than one medieval poem ends with, She drank. He fell. And then he ran. You hope this ends differently. That night you meet Tommaso under the willow again. No priest, no chaperone, no goose, just the two of you. He says, Whatever you gave me, it didn't change anything. You freeze, but, he continues, It did remind me that I already chose you, before the potion, before the walk, before the pair. You laugh relieved, giddy, terrified. Because tomorrow Lady Eubal will return with ink and parchment. But tonight? Tonight you kiss him, only once, just to see if it feels like a spell. It doesn't, it feels like you. You wake up with hay in your hair and guilt in your lungs. The kiss is still warm on your lips, but so is the reality. Today, Lady Isabel returns. With her parents, with the priest, with the contract, and you're sitting between two worlds, one embroidered in vineyards and silk, the other dusted in flower and wildflowers. Your family is already buzzing when you step into the main room. Your father is trying on his good cloak, the one with only one moth hole, and your mother is humming a wedding hymn under her breath. She turns to you, beaming. This is the day we rise. You nod and feel like a sack of potatoes dressed in human clothes. By midday, the noble carriage rolls into the village square. Trumpets are too expensive, so someone just claps awkwardly, while the family descends like royalty from a cloud of smug perfume. Lady Isabel steps out first. She smiles. Then she says, softly enough that only you hear it, You look like someone who didn't sleep. You look away. Inside, the house has been transformed. Table set, fire lit, cheese rearranged for maximum aesthetic effect. There's even a fresh broom leaning against the wall, completely unused, but symbolically present. The families gather. The parchment is produced. The contract. It's long, detailed, full of phrases like henceforth bound and in perpetuity, which always sound like spells designed to trap your ankles. The priest clears his throat. Do both parties consent? The room goes still. You look at your parents, you look at the priest, you look at Isabel, Who is watching you like someone reading a book she already knows the ending to Dot, and then she says, "Actually, I have something to say." Everyone blinks. "Don't think I'm ready." The priest stammers, "My lady?" She shrugs. "I think we both want different things. I like poetry I'm not supposed to like. And she likes a boy with green dust in his hair." You freeze. Your father gasps. Your mother goes pale. The priest drops a spoon. The room descends into the kind of silence, only interrupted by crackling fire and deeply held panic. Isabel turns. "To you. It's okay. You can say it. You do. You stand up." Shoulders shaking, knees rebellious, voice very much not ready, but you say it anyway. "I don't want this match." There, Dot. It's done, Dot. Like taking a bite out of scandal and chewing very slowly. Historians still argue how often marriage contracts were broken in medieval times. Among nobles, it was rare. Among peasants, it was practically impossible. Once goats were exchanged, you were as good as wed. But occasionally, if both families agreed, or if the priest was unusually soft-hearted, a match could be dissolved, or postponed, Dot, or simply forgotten, until the cows stopped talking about it. Isabel's father looks ready to sprout horns. This is disgraceful. Jubel just sighs. "So is that powdered duck pie we had at your banquet?" Your mother begins whispering a prayer. The priest rubs his temples. "This is irregular." "Love usually is," you say, surprising even yourself. Isabel smiles. "Good luck." She gathers her skirts and walks out, her tutor and brother scrambling after her like ducklings. The room remains frozen until your father says, "Well, what do we do with the cheese?" You sit by the fire later, everything numb and loud at once. You expect the fallout, the storm, the yelling, but instead Aunt Hilda wanders in with her eel stick and says, "I always preferred a good scandal over a bad marriage." She tosses you a half-rotted apple for luck. You head to the mill just before dusk. Ommaso is there. Of course he is. Leaning against a wagon, arms dusted in flour, smile crooked as ever. You say, "I may have broken a noble contract today." Replies, "I made you a bun shaped like a sheep." You take the bun. You eat the bun, and you laugh. The kind that shakes your shoulders and scares a nearby duck. He pulls something from his pocket. A ring. Not a fine one. Not jeweled. Just a simple band, bent slightly at one edge, like it's been through things. "I don't have land," he says. "I don't have titles. I don't even have a working roof." You nod. "But I have this. And I have you if you still want me." You do. You don't need a parchment to prove it. You don't need a priest to bless it. You just need this moment, and maybe the duck's approval. Tomorrow there will be chaos, gossip, disappointment, probably your mother crying into a cabbage. But tonight? Tonight, you're exactly where you should be, even if you had to break the rules to get there. You wake to the sound of your name being whispered, softly, sharply, repeatedly. It's your mother, and she is not whispering for comfort. She's whispering like someone trying to curse in church. You sit up slowly. She's standing by your bed, arms crossed, mouth pursed like she just bit into a lemon and found a worm wearing a tiny noble hat. "Would you care to explain?" she hisses. "Why Lady Isabel left this village with no contract, no wine, and no explanation beyond ask your daughter?" You blink. "Well, Do you have any idea what you've done? You nod Dot, and for once in your life, it's not a nod of guilt, Dot, it's a nod of peace. Dot, your father enters next, clutching a scroll and a mug of what is probably regret-flavored ale. You brace for shouting, but all he says is, "The match is over." Then he sits down with a sigh that carries the weight of 10 disappointed goats. Aunt Hilda strolls by the window with a wheelbarrow full of apples and mutters, "Good riddance." Her embroidery was smug. The rest of the day is a blur. There are meetings, murmurs, dramatic sighs. People drop by the house pretending to borrow things just to peek at the scandal. You find yourself on the receiving end of an avalanche of conflicting emotions. Relief, terror, freedom, joy, dread, and something deeper. Something like rightness. Because for the first time in weeks, no one's arranging your future for you. You're standing in it. Barefoot, unapologetic Dot and your family, for all their dramatic expressions and whispered disappointment, don't stop you. They don't lock you away. They don't drag you to the priest. They just sigh, Dot, because deep down they know this is how change starts, Dot. It's slow, loud, messy, like all good revolutions, and then 2 weeks later your marriage happens, Dot, not the fancy one, Dot, not the one with silk gloves and fruit carved into swans, Dot, no, Dot, this. One smells like freshly milled flour and wood smoke. You wear a garland of rosemary and daisies. You stand in the village square with Tommaso, his shirt slightly wrinkled, your hands very much clasped warmly, even excessively. The priest officiating is not Father Robald Dot. It's the other priest, the one with a soft voice and a mole that looks like a bean. Dot, he keeps the ceremony short, sweet. You kiss Dot in front of everyone, Dot, and no one turns to stone. Historians still argue whether medieval peasant marriages were religious or civil at heart. In truth, it varied by region, by era, by how much wine the priest had. But at its core, a marriage was a union agreed upon by families, communities, and hearts. And this one, it's all three. You don't ride away in a carriage. You walk home, Dot, hand in hand. A neighbor tosses a turnip in celebration. You dodge. Barely the village will gossip for months, maybe years. Did you hear they refused the vineyard? They say she fell in love with a miller's son. I bet she drank a potion. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Because you know what happened. You chose love over land. Laughter over legacy, Dot, and a slightly lopsided sheep bun over an embroidered duck. That night, you sit on your porch with Tommaso, your feet bare, your head on his shoulder. You talk about goats, Dot, about grain, about how one day, maybe, you'll teach your children that love doesn't always follow the rules, but it always knows where to go. You fall asleep to the sounds of crickets and the soft sigh of a breeze through willow leaves. You've made it. You survived. Medieval dating, Dot, barely, Dot, but you did, Dot, and somehow, in all the mess and the mud and the matchmaking, you found something real, Dot, something worth breaking the rules for, something that feels like home. And now, as the fire dims and the world outside your window quiets, take one last breath with me, Dot. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts grow slow and heavy, like flowers settling at the bottom of a sack. You're no longer in that little village. You're not navigating nobles or nodding through awkward silences. You're here, safe, tucked beneath the stars. The story has slowed, and so have you. The air is cooler now, rushed with the scent of earth and the memory of rosemary. Somewhere in the distance, a mill creaks gently, and the soft crackle of the hearth becomes a lullaby. Let the warmth of it wrap around your chest, around your hands, around your breath. There's no parchment to sign, no priest to please, no goose watching your every move. Just this quiet, just this calm, just this soft exhale. If your eyes are already closed, let them stay that way. If you're still listening, know this: you did well. You followed the rules until it was time to rewrite them. And now, with your heart finally settled, your story can rest to sleep deeply, dream slowly. And when morning comes, may it find you exactly where you need to be. Sweet dreams.